Chapter 24. When a man hath taken a wife, and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favour in his eyes, because he hath found some uncleanness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorcement, and give it her in her hand, and send her out of his house. And when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife. If the latter husband hate her, and write her a bill of divorcement, and giveth it her hand, and sendeth her out of his house, or if the latter husband die, which took her to be his wife, her former husband, which sent her away, may not take her again to be his wife, after that she is defiled, for that is an abomination before the Lord. And thou shalt not cause the land to sin, which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance. When a man hath taken a new wife, he shall not go out to war, neither shall he be charged with any business, but he shall be free at home 1 year, and shall cheer up his wife which he hath taken. No man shall take the nether or the upper millstone to pledge, for he hath taken a man's life to pledge. If a man be found stealing any of his brethren of the children of Israel, and maketh merchandise of him, or selleth him, then that thief shall die, and thou shalt put evil away from among you. Take heed in the plague of leprosy, that thou observe diligently, and do according to all that the priests and Levites shall teach you, as I commanded them, so ye shall observe to do. Remember what the Lord thy God did unto Miriam by the way, after that ye were come forth out of Egypt. When thou dost lend thy brother anything, thou shalt not go into his house to fetch his pledge. Thou shalt stand abroad, and the man to whom thou dost lend shall bring out the pledge abroad unto thee. And if the man be poor, thou shalt not sleep with his pledge. In any case thou shalt deliver him the pledge again when the sun goeth down, that he may sleep in his own raiment, and bless thee, and it shall be righteousness unto thee before the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not oppress an hired servant that is poor and needy, whether he be of thy brethren, or of thy strangers that are in thy land within thy gates. At his day thou shalt give him his hire, neither shall the sun go down upon it, for he is poor, and setteth his heart upon it, lest he cry against thee unto the Lord, and it be a sin unto thee. The father shall not be put to death for the children, neither shall the children be put to death for the fathers. Every man shall be put to death for his own sin. Thou shalt not pervert the judgment of the stranger, nor of the fatherless, nor take a widow's raiment to pledge. But thou shalt remember that thou wast a bondman in Egypt, and the Lord thy God redeemed thee thence. Therefore I command thee to do this thing. When thou cuttest down thine harvest in thy field, and hast forgot a sheaf in the field, thou shalt not go again to fetch it. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the work of thine hands. When thou beatest thine olive tree, thou shalt not go over the boughs again. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. When thou gatherest the grapes of thy vineyard, thou shalt not glean it afterwards. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. And thou shalt remember that thou wast a bondman in the land of Egypt. Therefore I command thee to do this thing. The two parts of this chapter that I want to discuss in some depth are, first, the bill of divorcement, and secondly, the gleaning of the fields. But we'll reverse the order. I'll deal with the gleaning of the fields and looking after the widows and the fatherless and the poor and the stranger. In all the fields throughout all of Israel that they were going to have, they were told they were not to harvest absolutely everything. They were supposed to leave grain unharvested in the corners of the fields. If they forgot to take a sheaf of grain, they were not supposed to go back for it. When they harvested the olives, one of the ways, the most common way to harvest the olives was to have a long thin pole, and to beat on the branches that the olives were on, and they would spread cloths on the ground, and the olives would fall onto the cloths, and then be gathered into containers to be taken to the olive press to be crushed and the oil harvested. But they weren't supposed to, once they hit them, whatever fell off, fell off. Anything that stayed was to be left for the stranger, the widow, the poor, the fatherless, so that there was something there. And the same with the grape harvest. And I remember one time I had a friend that told me that there was a vineyard that had not been cleaned, that was down in Kelowna. It's about 80 miles south of me. And I had to go to Kelowna anyway to help somebody harvest some apples. And this was a couple of miles away from there. And after it was over, I went over and had a look at this vineyard. I could not believe how much of harvest was still left. And these were table grapes, and there were small bunches, but they were all over the place. And I said to the lady who was at the place, whose vineyard it was, how come there's so many there? And she said, well, when we harvest the grapes, you know, there are still all kinds of leaves on the plants. And we can't see all the grapes that are there. We harvest the big bunches because that's what the table market harvest is for. And then there are all these small ones that are little handheld ones that the market doesn't really take and it doesn't really pay us to harvest, but they're all there. And so if you want them, they're yours. I must have taken 200 pounds of absolutely fabulous grapes. I brought them home. They were seedless. I made them into juice. They were just absolutely incredible grapes. And I could see where this would be a real treasure to somebody who was poor, fatherless widows. They could have sold these things. They could have made grape juice with them. They could have. These things would have been a real treasure. So there was lots there. And it didn't take away the necessity of them working and gave them the dignity of working to get what they wanted. And it was just theirs free for the taking. If they saw a field that had been harvested and there was some grain there, they could just go get it. That's all they needed to do. Now, the bill of divorcement was an interesting thing, and I know, because I've had a divorce in my own life, that it's not as simple as what this procedure seems to be. But I suspect this one was there primarily so that there was something on the books, as it were, for this, because it was really tough. Life was really tough in those days. And finding a companion that would work with you and for you, heart and soul, as most women did. I mean, by and large, the women bore the brunt of a lot of the labor. And for a man to be stupid enough, I mean, literally brain dead enough, to decide that a good woman was going to get divorced from him because of any kind of frivolous reason, this guy had to be just no brains whatsoever. But if she was a good wife, she was also a good worker. And that was highly recognized and extremely highly valued. And he would have to give her a bill of divorcement. Now, most of these guys couldn't read and couldn't write, so they'd have had to go to the gates of the city and have somebody write it out for them, so she would have an authorized certificate that she was free to marry. And then she was free to marry somebody. And marriageable women who were good workers and sincere women were extraordinarily valuable, as they should be today, but as they definitely were then. And the man who married her would know from the bill of divorcement that she was lawfully could be wed. And if he died later, or he divorced her later, this particular law saw to it that the original husband, even if the guy finally figured out that he had been really stupid to divorce her in the first place, could not marry her again. Once she was gone, she was gone. And I think part of this law had the function of seeing to it that the husbands, who tended to have more power and authority than some of them were really capable of coping with, were realized that they couldn't say, well, you burnt the meat again, you know, out you go. Any idea of a frivolous divorce, and you could always get her back again, that wasn't going to happen. When she was gone, she was gone. And I think that this particular law had that effect, and it was a beneficial effect, because some of the husbands needed beneficial thought process happening in their brain because it didn't happen all the time.